So overall, again, we're figuring about, let's say, 3 months, 2 to 3 months for design. We'll go with 2. Mm-hmm. 2 months for design, 2 to 3 weeks for permitting, another month. So you're at 4 months, the contract's another 2 months for permitting. So yeah, you're looking at 8 months or so realistically, like on kind of a, perfect scenario with no hiccups. But it's really, how often do you see that?
Oh, all the time. No, never, right? Never. I mean, it's a challenging process because you got to get to the next part to figure out your challenges that are ahead of you. Get to the next part, figure out what challenges are ahead of you, right? Welcome to another episode of Blueprints to Punch List. Today you've got Dave and I, just us, and we're going to run through, highlight more so of some of the construction efforts that GCs go through. We go through some of our experiences, but first, how we're coming right off the coattails of the holidays, the Christmas, the New Year's. How were yours?
Dude, the holidays were awesome. We went on a trip to Tennessee.
Very cool.
With right around Thanksgiving, and went up to Gatlinburg for a week. Okay. The main goal of why we wanted to go to Gatlinburg or to Tennessee was to hopefully see snow. And sure enough, the second night we got there, it started snowing, like not just a little bit, it was coming down for a couple hours. And so the kids loved it. They got to see going out there in their jammies. It was like 9 o'clock at night when it started snowing, and just kept coming down, and it stuck the next day. Right. So we had snow on the ground because we were way up in the mountains. It stuck for like the next 2 days. We had kind of snow on the balcony, and it snowed the following morning too. So kind of the one night, it was a Tuesday night, and then the Wednesday morning, it was also snowing up there. So this is really cool.
Couldn't ask for a better snow trip.
Yeah. We bought these snow suits that the kids can wear, and we borrowed some stuff from friends because living in Florida, how often do you actually get to see?
Right. I was going to say, if you're outside of Florida, a snow trip probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But
and as you know, with kids, they outgrow stuff so fast. So, but anyway, we got to put that to good use. We built a little snowman, and it was just a really cool experience. Our cabin was overlooking the mountains. And so you're waking up and got this huge window that just overlooks the mountain, the whole balcony, and it was big glass windows too in the living room. So it was a pretty cool little trip.
Yeah, definitely a big change from Florida, and I remember seeing some of the pictures. It looked cool.
Yeah, it didn't get above 35, so
it was a little cold. Yeah,
a little chilly there. But
awesome.
Again, had a fire going, so it was just like one of those right out of a postcard type of a setting.
Cool.
So
very cool. Yeah.
How about yours? What'd you do? During
much
holidays?
More uneventful, but I'd like to think just as beautiful. Just spent some time with family. We stayed local. Most of our immediate family is here in Orlando, so ran around quite a bit. Sometimes those days can get tiring for us, especially Christmas and Thanksgiving, but it's good. A lot of family. Kids were good, and off to a good start of the new year.
Yeah, and same. So we took that trip at the end of, like right around Thanksgiving, beginning part of December, knowing that had some stuff in the pipeline that was coming up. And while the holidays were nice, did work through some of it, which was kind of by design. But I do like the end of the year stuff. It helps slow down a little bit.
It's funny for me how much, at least for me, I think in general in our business, how much you can get done in those 2 weeks because it kind of goes quiet. Subs disappear, owners disappear, and
yes, some more so than others.
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't want them to disappear, but
yeah. But the job must progress. So
yeah,
there we are.
yeah, exactly. So no, it was good, and I do like that we're again can set up focused, knowing what what the goals are for the year and what want to achieve. So it's a good time of year.
Yeah, lock in, right?
Locked and loaded.
There you go. Awesome. Well, like I said, you all are without guests today. It's me and Dave, and we're gonna kind of go through and talk with each other to really highlight the construction side of things.
Some Q&A, right? Like frequently asked questions that we see and we get as we're just in our day to day. Everything from soup to nuts. So we'll see what we can come up with here.
Yeah, hopefully we can shed some light, right?
I can't wait to find out.
Yeah. All right. So we'll jump right into it, and I'll get with you. You know, kind of obviously we see projects of a multitude of different ways as they come in, depending on the relationship, the project, so on and so forth. But you know, we kind of have these two things: design, build, and then the design, bid, build process. Break down for us, you know, kind of what's the key differences between those two, and maybe some advantages you may see with one versus the other, or really, you know, the advantages for one in a particular application versus the other.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about: design build and design bid build. The names are kind of funky, but I do think having an understanding of the difference between the two, and I'll give you an example of each one because I've both had projects of both and why one has a significant advantage over the other. Mm-hmm. But at its core, design bid build refers to kind of that estimating construction process of how a project is approached.
The typical process, you'd say.
Yeah, I would say that's the most common. Most people are familiar with that. When we get solicited to have an estimate, somebody wants an estimate, or they reach out and say, "Hey, can you guys give me a price on this?" It's usually they're bidding it out to other GCs and other companies to to price and figure out where that's going to come in. So design, bid, build. So the design of the project. So the design of the plans, the blueprints, everything is already done, and then we get that sent to us to now bid.
Okay.
And we send it out to our sub base, as does the other contractors. So now we have 3, 4, maybe 5 GCs involved in this process, and then we all have our own subcontractors and vendors that we like to use. So on a typical build out, we see 20 subs.
Yeah, right around there, give or take.
Yeah, so say 20 subs for each, mechanical, the drywall, the demo, the electricals, all these will have, we send it out to bid as well. So now we're talking 3, 4, 5 companies on that end as well for the bid. So by the time that it's all said and done, there's hundreds of potentially 200-300 different companies involved, and the effort that it takes to get that back to try to get that lowest price. So now you get to the build side of it. So design, bid, we bid it out, and then now it's getting ready to build. So the owner selects the GC selects their subs, and that's the process. So many times what happens is one of the flaws with design, bid, build is that the price comes back and the owner goes, wait a minute, that's it's about 30% over budget of where we had anticipated this to come in.
Yeah, kind of different. The difference, or I'll say the gap between the want and what's really feasible, what's attainable.
Right, because they have no idea. They had leased the space. They had an architect draw up the plans, but really no thought went into what what the budget was. When generally architects are designing, a lot of times some of those pricing considerations aren't necessarily taken into effect because the architects don't know the difference between the cost of a train system or a Lennox or one electrical light fixture package versus another. And it's not to their fault, but that's not what they do. They just design they just design to the specifications that the client's looking for.
Right. They're not in it every day, right?
Yeah.
We're having to get pricing on that stuff every other day, different looks. Yeah.
So it comes back, and this is where the flaw with this type of a bid process is that now you got to waste the time you got the numbers back, and now you got to go back and figure out how you're going to make up that 30% difference.
Right.
Something's got to either get cut out of the project, or you have to get more funding to do that build out. Or
that process, you're outlining just kind of the value engineering efforts, right? Going through trying to see what we can pull out, what we can do. It's a tall task.
Yeah, and many times, I mean, on a $500 to $1 million project, to cut out 30% is a lot. And usually, what ends up the most obvious and easy is the things that we see, right? The flooring, the toilet fixtures, maybe the whether you're using wall tile or paint. So that there's only so much you can do with that, but really where most of the money is in the guts of the building. Right. It's what you don't see. It's the drywall. You do see the drywall, but it's still part of. You don't consider drywall as a finished.
Sure,
you got to paint
it. The nice paint color and the nice flooring, right? Sanitary lines aren't as pretty, but absolutely necessary.
Yeah. So again, it's just now it ends up adding time, and then now you're adding money, so you're trying to save money. So that process of a construction project that should take maybe 6 to 8 months from initial design to permit to a build out is now taking 12 to 18 months because of these slowdowns that come up, and again the resources that are just wasted along the way.
Right.
So the design build, the difference there is that you come to, you hire your architect, and at the same time you make your GC selection right at the beginning of the project before you even get to necessarily having before you even have the blueprints or any of that completed. And often we've seen where an owner will come to us and they'll ask for us to propose an architect in our
carry
in our
the
quote.
design. Yeah.
So we'll present the design fee, our general conditions, and then our fee, and that's what you make that decision on. And the difference there is, so now you have your contractor working alongside the architect to get the project off the ground. So the architect, as they're drawing the plans, we can see a 50% set, a 75 or a 90% set, and then 100%. So we can make those adjustments along the way to say, hey, why are you, can we maybe shift to a different AC system that you're proposing because we know that it's going to take longer or it's more cost, it's going to cost more. And then as they're designing that, we're pricing it right along with it. So we know what the owner's budget looks like, and we know where they want to come in on this project. So we're able to steer that ship in the direction of keeping it within budget. And that's huge. So right off the bat, you're saving time and you're saving money potentially on these projects. So and then the kind of the last piece to that as well is, so when we have the 100% set for the drawings of the space, now we can submit that and price the project completely out, make sure everything is done while it's in permitting. We get pricing, we got a contract with the owner. So when the permit is approved, you're not having to wait additional steps to again not go back and price it and VE that, because you had that all along the way.
Right. Kind of went through that process already. Right. Now, just, devil's advocate here. I mean, does it lock somebody into using the GC, right? Say, because in theory, a GC could go ahead, all right, I've got the design build, I'm just going to charge these exorbitant fees, right? I mean, do you have to get locked in? I mean, is there ways that it can be structured to be flexible?
Yeah, and this is I think the most powerful thing with a design build is that, one, you're not locked in, and two, you as a GC, we would have an open book with the client in that case. So if they wanted to look at our subs, and we present the quotes to them, so we're still going through the same process. We're still vetting our subs, but now we can present to the owner, okay, we have plumber A who's a little bit higher, or we have plumber B who's a little bit lower. Let's make the decision on who we're going to use based on who's going to be the best fit for the job. Knowing that, again, we're going to come in within budget, but they also have that confidence of knowing who, that the team that they're working with has their best interest in mind.
Right. So the transparency there, really. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I know. I share the same feelings as you. Obviously we're on the GC side, so I guess easy for us to say, right? But the design build really does, in terms of overall efficiency, and I feel overall better product and for the end user, right, better experience. Design build's the way to go.
Yeah, and I had just a quick example. I've had a project in Palm Bay a couple of years ago where it was just that. The owner came to us and they wanted a design build project. It was a 3,500 square foot clinic, and the bid invite request or RFP request proposal went out early December. So mid-December we had the pricing back with the architect fee, our fee, and our general conditions for the project. And by the end of December, the client made a decision. So that gave us the intent to release the architect to start their drawings while we finalized the contract with the owner. And with end of February, I think we were in for permitting. Palm Bay was a fairly quick process, so that does make a difference, permitting wise. But by mid-June, end of June, early July, we had CO on the space. So in a project so starting from early December to say end of June.
Yeah. So just on the other side of site selection, you're talking 7 months and they're in.
Yeah. And
cool.
There's always ways to improve on that, but that just like that to me. And again, we came in within their budget. We knew the challenges because we knew the space right up front with the architect was designing it. So there weren't too many surprises, and it was just a smooth project all around.
Awesome. Yeah, certainly see the benefits there, right? Everybody's working together. Things are happening simultaneously instead of, in a vacuum and one right after the other. And yeah, very cool.
All right, let's jump to the next question. Ken, can I do my project without a permit? I just want to move, a couple of walls here and there, and maybe, add a little room in the back of my space. Can you just help me to get this done without a permit? I know we're adding some electrical outlets and running some power, and the AC is going to have to be reconfigured a little bit, but it's not too much, right? We can get that done.
Yeah, no, I can't tell you how many times I get those requests and those asks, and
you get them too.
yeah. Not just because the AHJ may see this or something, but there's very little you can do without a permit that goes above and beyond your simple finishes, right? Your wall coverings, your flooring, your paint, your cabinetry. Without affecting. But to your point, right? I think, and understandably so, in a lot of tenants or owners or clients' eyes, it's simple, right? All we're doing is moving this wall over, right? But there's quite a few other things involved with moving that wall over, right? Say we split this room in half. Really, in reality, all we're doing is building a wall. But what we're changing is all of a sudden we're changing life safety, which is the biggest box we check and the first box we check when determining the need for a permit, right? Because that's obviously what has the biggest implications. Now, you're always going to have to go into your MEPs and your utilities, right? Fire sprinkler, fire protection, fire alarm. Those things are of importance and do have those high implications. But even electrical, plumbing, mechanical, HVAC, right? All those things go into reconfiguring offices. So while it seems small, there's typically a lot that goes into it. Now, you want to, you've bought another 5 centers and you want to rebrand them under your umbrella, right? And going in there and replacing the millwork like for like. And by like for like, I mean same footprint, right? We're not having to touch electrical. We're not having to touch the plumbing, not having to touch anything. It's just simply swapping out the boxes. We're going in there doing new flooring, new paint all day. Let's do that. But at that point, we're not impacting any of those other things, the MEPs, safety, the fire protection, the life safety, all that stays intact. So while on the surface, a lot of the stuff, does look simple, and I do acknowledge that. There's typically a lot more involved. And the AHJ is not somebody that...
What's the AHJ again?
Yes, so authority having jurisdiction. So whether that's the city, the county...
The building departments.
Building department, yeah. Building department, utility department, those bodies having the authority over, really... the development as well as the operation of business, right? Because that's where the implications come in, right? You're an existing business and you decide, hey, I'm just trying to add a wall here. It's simple. I'm not going to pull a permit. We're just going to add a wall. For whatever reason, you get a visit from the fire marshal, somebody from the building department. Maybe they visit your center and you have no idea they're from the building department, but they see.
Or they might just be a client there or a patient too. We've had that happen.
We have had that. Yeah.
The building official was, and not a project that we did, but heard from another client that they had the building official was their patient at the clinic. Mm-hmm. And one day he comes in and he goes, well, when did you guys, he noticed that they had added a couple of walls. Mm-hmm. And did not see a permit for it. He went back and checked, and sure enough, there wasn't a permit for that. So it can be tricky when they when you do stuff like that, and at the same time that puts our license on the line too, and get on the disciplinary board and even lose it if it's severe enough, and not only that, but the fines and so there's definitely implications.
Yeah, and that. Ones that we don't want to mess around with, right? As a GC, I don't ever want to be sitting in front of the disciplinary board, right? There's no reason to. There's no, these codes, these rules, these regulations are in place for a reason, right? And we should respect that. But even from the client's perspective, right? They could shut your business down. we'll skip over the fees. The fees can get kind of crazy depending on what it is and what level it rises to, but they can just straight up shut your business down. So, and then that process, in order to get it back open, right, is lengthy, like we were talking about before. All right, now you got to come up with some plans. Now you got to put them through their building department to get their approval, right? There's some other options.
It's going to go smoother if you're trying to come in after the fact?
Yeah, no, I think you're not going to get many favors at that point, I would say. Now, state of Florida has some different options. That's probably a conversation for a different time, third-party review, third-party inspection, but that doesn't absolve you of the need for permits, right? That doesn't remove you from the process dealing with the building departments. They're still involved, and they're always going to be involved. So as opposed to trying to skirt the lines and running that risk, I always suggest, stay on the safe side of that.
So it's just not worth it.
No, not worth it. And for a lot of these simple things, if you find the right architect, the right design team, you can get simple drawings very quickly that will get you through permitting very quickly. That'll get you away from the 3-month lead times to get to a point where you can build something.
Because that's essentially what it usually comes down to, is the timeline. So they want it done now because the business has the need.
Always.
And realizing that it can get done quickly, even going through the right channels. Yeah. Just knowing that you have options and don't have to put yourself at risk.
Right. And like you said, it's about, not to belabor, getting with the GC early on, but get with them early on, right? Now we can talk about this. Now I understand your timeline, right? So maybe my suggestion is this: let's get bare minimum plans to get through permitting. You and I will figure out finishes and all that stuff to make it look pretty. Let's get through permitting, right? Let's look at the option of third-party review. In my experience, third-party review is much quicker than your building department,
sure.
Right? And understandably so. The building departments are overloaded, right? They've got a lot on their plate, and they've got a lot to review. And the third party is an option. It's a viable option. It's one that we've found success in for those particular projects. It does come at a cost. Those costs vary depending on the project, but in my opinion, they've always been reasonable. And then further to that point, you can go third party inspections, right? I've never come across a third party inspector that's going to allow you to blur the lines. But they are more flexible and available in terms of when you can get them out there and so on and so forth. So they do help to expedite that. But have the conversations early on. Don't try and skirt the building department and the building code, because it's just not worth it.
For sure.
Yeah. And, I think, for us too, as well as clients, like I would love to turn projects over as quick as humanly possible, right? But again, it's just not worth it. So along that construction process and kind of the timeline of stuff, right, where permitting usually is what is, do we do it? Do we not do it? Because of the time, how long is, the typical construction process? Start to finish, engagement to completion, turnover.
Okay, so we're talking from, let's say...
We'll start, obviously it's on a couple different levels. So sure. Let's break it down into kind of two things. Your standard tenant improvement, interior build out, and then let's talk about your ground up developments, your new sites.
Okay, yeah, most of my experience has been with tenant improvements. Mm-hmm. And as a company, we've done quite a few ground up and different projects like that. Those will have obviously a longer time frame, but tenant improvement wise, so a lot of it is, biggest question is how quickly does the client wants to be in the space, and what their realistic expectations are, and understanding that if they come to us and they have 3 months to move in and there's no drawings, there's none of that. Mm-hmm. It's not a reality that it's going to happen.
Sure. And you got to be honest at that point, right? Sometimes that's a tough conversation.
It is. But that's, I think, one of the reasons that people do like to work with us, because we don't sugarcoat it. We tell it how it is. And, mm-hmm. and that's, the facts are the facts. We can't change that. But so to answer your question, typical construction process, say from estimating. I guess let's back design. The design can take anywhere from, I would say, 6 weeks to 12 months or 12 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks on an interior build out of 10,000 square feet, somewhere in that time frame, depending on, again, the detail level of the detail and the finishes, and just how in depth those drawings need to be. And then from there we have, so let's say 2 months on a 2 to 3 months for drawings. I would say another 2 to 3 weeks for estimating. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty conservative timeline. We can get it done quicker, but to get good coverage on a project, you needed that 2 to 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Probably another month to hash out contracts, all the red line, all the back and forth, and then there's the permitting process, which can run concurrent with the contract. Permitting, if you're not using third party, can be 2, 3, 4 months.
Mm-hmm. Depending on comments, right?
Depending on comments. So if you get comments, then it's back to the architect and engineer. They got to revise the drawings, and then it's another cycle. And some building departments take minimum 4 to 6 weeks for a second review, no matter what. So yeah, it adds more time. And then once you finally have the permit, by that time, hopefully we have the contracts figured out. We have our team of subcontractors and vendors selected, and those contracts out, and we're really just waiting to get the permit approved and start swinging hammers. Mm-hmm. And then construction for a 10,000 square foot space is anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks. You would adjust down or up depending on the complexity of the project. And speaking to healthcare projects specifically, where you're going to have 12, 16, 20 exam rooms and multiple nurses stations and so different complexities to the project, not an open office space. Mm-hmm. And so overall, again, if we're figuring about, let's say, 2 to 3 months for design, we'll go with 2. Mm-hmm. 2 months for design, 2 to 3 weeks for permitting, another month. So you're at 4 months, the contract's another 2 months for permitting. So yeah, you're looking at 8 months or so realistically, okay, like on kind of a, perfect scenario with no hiccups. But it's really, how often do you see that?
Oh, all the time. No, never, right? Never. I mean, it's a challenging process because you got to get to the next part to figure out your challenges that are ahead of you. Get to the next part, figure out what challenges are ahead of you, right? Especially in a lot of these interior remodels, right? We can have the best as-built in the world. Whether or not they're accurate, we won't know until we get in there, right? So how does our timeline extend for ground up? Now all of a sudden you're bringing in more engineering, more design, more work. Now you're inviting, a subsection of the building department called the civil side of things, the site side of things.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing there is getting to a place where you have site approvals. That kind of is that point of, okay, you have been given permission to start building your project. So there's 2 different aspects to that. Site approvals is all the underground civil work, mm-hmm, that you were mentioning, and then the building. So getting the site ready and then the building to go vertical. Mm-hmm. And that's usually that key mark of, okay, now we have site approvals, we can submit for submit for plan review, and hopefully the drawings are ready by that time for the actual building, because it is a different department that reviews that for most jurisdictions.
Yeah. I know some will review them concurrently, which helps on the timeline. Others refuse to review them concurrently, right? They want to see that the civil plan, the site plans are approved prior to even looking at the building plans. So, it adds even more time there. Yeah.
And site approvals, they can take 6 to 12 months, 18 months.
Yeah. Those can get pretty involved.
Yeah, including the design and all the surveys that have to get done. So there's a lot that goes into that. So knowing that, what would you say from that point on?
Yeah, I mean, from that point on, again, once you get your site approvals, you're in pretty good shape in terms of the known, right? Back to the known. Now, there can be curveballs, there can be hiccups, but overall, you're going to spend at least, now say that you're designing your building during that period of time, and we're submitting as soon as we're at site approvals for our building. You're looking at least 10 to 12 months, probably extending out into your 18-month time frame, depending on the size of what you're building and the project you're taking on. So those ground up projects certainly extend, from a year to 2 years to do, from let's go to completion. And you can get all the way up to, we all see these medical towers, these medical centers, right?
Hospitals,
multi-story health buildings. Towers, health parks, right? Now you're getting into the 5-year conversation, right? So there's a lot involved for sure.
And that's not necessarily where our experience lies. We tend to stay smaller medical office buildings.
No, I enjoy sleeping at night. Yeah. Personally.
Yeah,
I don't know how some of those guys do it.
It's a different animal altogether. So, yeah, just having those conversations with your contractor, your design team, civil engineers, everybody has to be working together to fully understand the timelines going into what those expectations are. And that way there's going to be surprises, but at least you're minimizing that along the way.
Yeah, and get in with the city early on. Back to the AHJ, right? The authority having jurisdiction. Get with them early on. They'll have meetings with you. You can discuss feasibility. You can get a good idea of what they will and won't allow you to do, what they are standing behind, and what they aren't. Right. So get in there early on. Get with your GC early on. Get with your architect early on, and really just build your team and move forward. That's the way you're going to get there the fastest.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's do one more. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. What are general conditions?
I believe they're what clients view as the most negotiable piece of a contract. Just kidding. No, in all seriousness. I mean, it's really what it takes to complete a project, right? The overhead, what's involved in organizing everything. Now, GCs are set up differently, right? There's GCs out there that execute on the work, right? And there's GCs
meaning they self-perform and do the work themselves.
Right. They've got in-house framers. They've got in-house demo crews. They've got in-house drywall crews, maybe even into the MEPs. Maybe they hold the licenses on the MEP. So their stuff's going to look a little different. So what I'll speak to is more common setup and how we're set up. Is we act as a GC and we subcontract everything out, right? So we take care of managing the project, the supervision of the project, handling the project, every facet of it, but we look to others to execute the work. So those general conditions really support those efforts on our end, right? General conditions typically include the supervision of the superintendent on site, myself as the project manager, some time for me.
The superintendent, that I think is huge too, just as a point that you want to make sure that the superintendent is in-house for the GC and not a third party.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to know the processes, systems of the company that you're working with. So that's one thing to just make sure.
Yeah, no, understand. I mean, you bring up a good point. It's one thing to have an outside source or a third party manage the project, right? Manage the overall project. But in terms of on-site full-time supervision, you want the GC to have somebody within their company self-performing that, some skin in the game, right? Not a third party that could kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Overhead costs. It's myself, the project manager. We have project coordinators that help us on the project execution side of things. Their time goes there. Our accounting department, right? Our overhead. And then the project specific costs, right? In our general conditions, we typically carry, if we need an office on site for the duration of the project, that's going to be in your general conditions. Our plans, right? Somebody's got to order the plans. We're going to pay for those plans. Those are going to be part of general conditions. It's really the really overhead costs, but the project specific costs are
dumpsters,
toilets, your connexes, your storage containers, your
insurance sometimes is lumped into it.
Sometimes, a lot of times clients want to see that separate, right? So we'll separate any contingencies we may carry, right? Any insurances we may carry, because a lot of times the client wants to see, all right, what insurance do you carry? What does your builder's risk look like? What does your liability insurance look like? What does that?
And a lot of times that is spelled out in the contract of what is required for the GC to produce and carry on a project.
Yeah. And then our profit, right? We all have got to make some sort of profit doing this. Our profit is separate from our general conditions.
Yeah.
Really on top of the overall value of the project. So general conditions is a part of that. Easiest way to explain general conditions is it really just encompasses all the costs that allow us to execute the work, right? Separate from the work itself. Yeah.
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 And to your point, it is often the most questioned, or sometimes people look at that line item and go, well, what am I paying for here? And it does take that education of helping people understand that that these are real costs that we have to, no matter who you hired, they're going to have overhead costs to run a business.
Absolutely.
And there's varying levels of that depending on the size of contractor that you're looking to hire to run your project. Mm-hmm. Is what's going to vary those costs. And I also, want to just command us, like, we do tend to run pretty lean on general conditions just to make sure that owners aren't overcharged and we don't overcharge people on those costs, and really keep it at a minimum. And that's staying nimble. It's doing things on the back end to make sure that we can support that. But that's a good explanation. Yeah.
Hopefully, I've had to explain it quite a bit, as I'm sure you have, and understandably so, right? Like, it's not a small number, right? We're talking, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a week, depending on the project. What am I getting for that, right? And it's a valid question. One I typically find is easy to explain through laying out, this is what's involved in this. It's not just, hey, you're paying us to take on the job. These are costs we're going to incur. The project's going to incur.
Right. And it's not our fee. It's not our...
No. That's
none of that. It's...
pay wages, cover costs, project-specific items, those sort of things. Yeah.
Well, good stuff, Ken. I think we did a good job today of diving into a couple of questions, and we saved some for the future. I mean, the one thing is, if you have any questions as you're watching this, let us know in the comments. Yeah. Send us a DM, and we'll work on answering those in future episodes.
Yeah, part 2.
Part 2 to be continued.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. We did it.
Thank you. We'll see you.